Hey everybody, welcome to episode 68 of the Is That Normal podcast. And today we wanted to highlight and dissect a really great resource for families.
Yes, we're going to today be looking at Matt Chandler and Adam Griffin's book, Family Discipleship, which we were talking about beforehand. Just picking this book up, I like the cover, yes. I like the colors, I like that it's got a cut tree on the front of it.
It's very cool material.
Yes, a good design, but yeah. So we're gonna be looking at that, and their process is to lead your home through time, moments, and milestones. So we'll kind of talk about that as we go through. I think it's really a fantastic and fresh look at some things for parents. I use this book really heavily in preparing the sermon I just preached at our church on Sunday, as well as kind of a series we're doing about family, because it's just a really good practical guide to how to intentionally disciple your family. And so if you were here for that, this is a good deeper dive. If not, we're going to kind of walk you through this content today.
Awesome. So before we get into the content, when you were growing up, how would you describe the level of planning in your household?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. As I thought about this, there's a lot of variance there. So both of my parents were very intentional, organized, practical people. So, I mean, they had a system for everything. They had a plan for everything. They had a planner for everything. My dad maybe didn't write it down as much as my mom did, but he knew what he was doing at work. He knew what he was doing in the farm. He knew what we were doing in our household. I mean, it just pretty regimented people about the things they were intentional about. But some of the things, just as far as emotional and spiritual development in our life, there wasn't a plan for some of those things. Right. Some of like what content we watched on TV and stuff. There was no plan for some of those things. So so the work kind of stuff was very planned and organized. Mm-hmm. The non-work stuff maybe not as much. So it's kind of interesting parallels there. I thought, Mm-hmm.
Yep. And I would say in my house very very similar. I wouldn't necessarily say we had plans. We had routines, of the things that, hey, this is what we did. And, but really as far as some of those more non-practical, hey, this is what we're doing this week type things, probably not as defined in our household growing up, I would say, definitely. So taking that into account, how has that affected you as an adult and as a parent even?
Yeah, several things. One, and as you say that about routines, another thing that kind of remind me of is particularly my mom was huge on traditions. Mm-hmm. So we had we had very static, dinner times and how dinner was done and who sat where, and there's a lot of tradition and rhythm to that. But then even like holidays, there are certain things you always did at holidays. And so there's a lot of structure there. And like expectation, like that's always going to be this way. And then my wife, her family background growing up was very different. They were very loose and flexible and not much routine. It was like whatever the whim of the day was. And so as we came together and tried to put a household together, it was never like contentious, but it was always like, I would be surprised. I would be like, no, we always do this. Like, well, just because we do it once doesn't mean we always do it. It's not her perspective. And, so we've really kind of had to go through that. But I know as we've kind of grown through that and our kids have gotten older, we've realized just the value of rhythm, routine, and tradition. We realize that we have to be intentional about building those things. And then we've also really tried to be thoughtful anyway about some of those things that maybe we weren't guided with as well as kids, so we've really tried to work on emotional and spiritual development with our kids over time. So
so today, no matter what kind of planner you are, kind of what your approach is, we really want to challenge you. And our goal today is just to think about considering a plan for family discipleship. Well, welcome back to the Is That Normal podcast. And, if you're new to the podcast, maybe just checking us out for the first time, we just try to use this as a platform to share some resources and hope for people that are raising children in a world that's difficult to raise children in general, and especially, godly children and it ties right into what we're talking about today with, figuring out how to disciple your family. And so, we do these podcasts every other week. On Tuesdays, these come out. But in between, we have a lot of resources and content and things that we share through multiple different channels. We have a Facebook page, we have an Instagram, a YouTube page, and then we have a website, which is isthatnormal.org. And so you can also email us at connect@isthatnormal.org. So if you haven't checked those out, definitely encourage you to go back. Like I said, we're on episode 68 now.
Yeah.
So we've done almost 2 years, about a year and a half of these now. And so we've really covered a wide range of topics as it pertains to families and parents. And so definitely check those things out.
And we'd love to hear, your feedback as well as a listener, maybe what some of your issues and questions are. And we really want this to be a two-way communication as much as possible. So we'd love to hear from you and connect in all of those ways.
Absolutely.
So Randall, before the title break there, you mentioned that we're going to be talking about a plan for discipleship. So, first let's talk about what that means. So help us understand what discipleship or discipleship plan means.
Yeah. So, discipleship, I think to me, the way I would define that is it's that intentional growth in our walk with Christ, in our faith. Once you've accepted Christ and you're a follower, if that's where we stop, then we're never growing. We're never growing deep in our relationship and really understanding what it means to follow Christ. And so, we have a responsibility for ourselves to grow, but then, as leaders of our families, we have a responsibility then to help, our children and the rest of our family and bring them along in that journey as well, and to help them grow. And so kind of what we're talking about today is, how do we do that? Especially kind of talking about as a household, as a family, how do we do that?
Yeah. And even like words right out of the book that we're going to be looking at, they say this about family discipleship is doing whatever, whenever, so that your family can become friends and followers of Jesus Christ. And I like that because it, that's a broad scope, but it also, expresses that urgency, to do that. We only have our kids for this amount of time in our households, and so what are we doing intentionally to influence them? And I know for me, I found being a parent and raising a bunch of kids, 6 of them that I'm raising. This is basically a simple concept. The things we're going to talk about, the things we talk about when we mean discipleship, it's really simple stuff. It's going to sound like things you've heard over and over again. But I found that while it's simple, it's really hard sometimes to get that teeth and that rhythm of doing that. And so I'm excited to share about this book because I think it's got some great resources to help us do that a little bit better.
Yeah, and one of the words that you've already heard us say multiple times and that you'll hear really almost every podcast we've done, the word intentional.
Yes.
And, when we're talking about intentional discipleship, it's no different than even things we've talked about as far as when we're raising kids and you want them to understand, we want them to grow into productive human beings, and what that looks like as far as discipline, and what that looks like as far as how we teach them just to be functioning, human beings.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen on accident, and neither does discipleship. We don't stumble our way into becoming, stronger followers of Christ and being discipled. That has to be something we make a decision
and
to
something
do.
you said about discipleship. Discipleship's not salvation. It's the steps after salvation.
Yeah.
But sometimes we get in this trap of like, oh, my kids accepted Jesus, we got baptized, good.
We're good.
And then we just come and get our gold star for sitting in a pew every week, and that is that's not enough. That's not what God meant when He wanted to redeem our lives. He has a purpose for us, and that is to get to know Him and His ways and how to follow them, and that's for us and our children. So
and as we've talked about on here, that responsibility doesn't fall solely on the church. That responsibility starts and is, I would say, even more critical in the home.
Yeah.
So what are some great things about this book?
Other than a really cool cover,
which we agree is awesome. You can't feel it, but it has like a rubber, it's
almost soft. It's not like a plushie, but it's somewhere somewhere in between hardback and plushy books. So, but aside from that, several things. One, I found this book to be really encouraging. I mean, they are pro parents. They are behind you. They talk about how valuable you are, and I mean, through the whole book, it's like you can do this, and we know you're not perfect, neither are we, but here's some ways that we can be your cheerleader, and just like I read it, and I'm like, yeah, let's go storm the castle. Like, I mean, it's really that kind of a book. For parents reading it was for me. It's also really understandable. When I first bought this, I thought potentially it was going to be like a devotional book. Like I was like, oh, okay, we're going to disciple our kids with this. Well, that's not what it is. And so, it's not a book that you're going to read with your kids, but it's a book anybody can read. It's at a very understandable, very relatable, very real level of like, this is what life looks like, and this is what injecting discipleship and spirituality,
and it's not super thick, so it's not intimidating.
It's not. It is not a very big book, but it is incredibly practical. It's just 6 chapters, and the chapters aren't that long. And I don't know, the font's pretty good. It's like double spaced, so yeah, like you can get through it pretty quickly. But 6 chapters. They start with why do we do discipleship. They talk about what discipleship is a little bit more. They talk about how we disciple, and then they give you 3 chapters, each one for each tool that they suggest. And so it's just good, applicable. Like, man, you get through it, and you can be doing the things they say like in minutes, really, I think.
So give us a little bit, share a little bit about how they encourage us to approach making a family discipleship plan.
Yeah, so these guys are both pastors and parents. Adam actually used to work at Matt's church, and now he has his own church, and so but they're both pastors, and what they share in there is that most people don't have a plan. And especially maybe you did when your kids were little, and maybe you read bedtime stories or prayed with them, but as they get to be teenagers and they snarl and they smell and they do all the things that teenagers do, like it's almost like we stop having a plan, and that's when they need it the most, when they're forming their adult identity. And so he says we need to figure out how to do this, and he says because we're all discipling our kids. You have a discipleship plan. It's just whether you've thought about what it's going to be and what direction you're leading your kids in, because you're raising your kids up to be somebody in the way that they view the world, in the way that they view God, in the way that they're going to live their life. But we as parents want them to grow up to love Jesus and to serve their church and to make good decisions and all those things. And if we want to do that, we have to be intentional about what that plan is. So they share this really very basic structure that's largely based off Deuteronomy 6, which is a section of the Bible that we talk about a lot, because it is these foundational things of what's the greatest commandment: to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and know that there is no other God but Him. And then right after it says, and so share this with your kids every way you can. What he said, whenever, however, whatever. And so that's really from Deuteronomy 6. And so, but they break it down to like these 4 things that are going to help you do that better. And the first one is modeling, because you have to be living it first. If you're going to encourage your kids to do it, you have to be doing it. This starts with your love of God and your own personal discipleship and your own personal spiritual routine. And so it's going to be how you treat your neighbors and yourself and your spouse. And, so that's where this has to start, is learning to be a disciple yourself. And so there's some good ideas on how to do that if you're not doing that particularly intentionally right now. But then they kind of split out these 3 things that we're going to look for with our kids. One, we're going to look for times. Deuteronomy 6, I shared this in our sermon, it kind of talks about these 4 times, so you got meal time, travel time, morning time, and bedtime, and so these natural moments in life where we're typically together, how are you going to use those intentionally to share truth? And so they talk about, making a choice about picking some of those times to read God's word together, to pray together, to serve together. And in the chapter on it, they include a lot of ideas for discussion and some ideas on what a specific family worship discipleship time might look like, and lots of different practical ways to start, on paper, writing down, we're going to do this. This is the time we're going to do it. And, this is the arc of what we're going to read. And so just really nitty gritty practical stuff on how to plan those times. They also talk about moments, which I thought is such a cool thing, because I know for me, as I think back through my spiritual journey, you probably do, Randall, there's these moments where it's like, that meant a lot. Yeah. And that meant a lot. And that meant a lot. And really, if I was thinking about them, some of them are just like, wow, God orchestrated, nobody planned that. But some of them were because people in my life had either made a decision to ask me some questions. Some people had planned an event. There was intentionality about preparing for moments. And it talks a lot about how we as parents can both look for and create those teachable moments. What it looks like to lead your children in good discussions about their heart and their relationship with God. What it looks like to lead them to making the right kind of decisions. And so they've got all these really good lists on some foundational truths and principles that we want our kids to hold, and some ways to have conversations around those things, like just bullet point after bullet point of like, our kids should know this and our kids should know this, but just some things for us to have jumping off points. Yeah. So really good stuff. And then the last thing is milestones. Again, this is that concept of using cultural milestones of life to commemorate and remember God and what He does. And we've got some of those coming up, soon in our lives, in our church's life. When we're doing this podcast, it's like graduation season. We've got young people are getting ready to graduate from high school and from college. And at church, we try to make a big deal about that. We give them a gift, we bring them up in front, we pray over them. And because we want them to remember God in those moments and those milestones. And so they have some really great ideas on how to do that with things like birthdays and holidays and specific ages. And we've talked about before, it's kind of that rites of passage moment and making a significant spiritual deal out of some of those things in their life. So, yeah,
absolutely. So what are some big takeaways?
Yeah, several. Make an intentional plan to make a discipleship plan. I think that's number one goal. That's why we're here today, is to say, hey, if you're not doing this, you should make a plan. But that doesn't mean that you have to have charts and graphs and your whole year planned out. That's just to say, I'm going to do one thing this week to pick a time to start talking to my kids about the relationship with God, or reading the Bible with them, or praying with them. I mean that's it. And
again, going back to what we said before is, you can have good intentions, but good intentions is different than being intentional, because you can have good intentions and those things just, anything we do, we say, hey, I want to spend more time doing this, but if we don't make it, carve out a time and make that a priority, it just doesn't happen.
No,
not consistently, at least.
I agree. And I think about a plan for me, and I think for most of us, the best thing to do is to start out maybe talking about what my goal is, and sometimes maybe it's even good with our kids to sit down and say, this is where do you want your life to go, and this is what I see for your life, and these are some things, this is not about career or the specific person I want you to marry, that I've got a contract with their parents for, any of that. No, it's like, these are the kind of things I want to see built into your life. And so what's it going to take for us to get there? And we work our way backwards and say, well, it starts today by involving God in our life. And so what's that look like? And so I think that can help us in making that plan. And then as you do it, start writing those things down. Put it on a calendar. Make it doable. I know at my house, if I tell my kids, these are the 5 things I want you to do this week, and then I ask them 22 minutes later, they don't remember any of those 5 things, And so we have charts. It's like, okay, on Mondays, this is what we do. Oh, okay. And even then, I have to remind them several times during the day, and they're like,
go to the chart.
Yeah. They start forgetting how to read. I mean, all sorts of. It's just terrible, right? But so it's really hard. So the easier you can make it for yourself and your kids, the better. And so in the book, even, it's got some guides on how to organize this. These are things we do on Sundays. These are things we do on Mondays. These are things we do on Fridays, and just kind of and write it down, post it for your family, so that we all know that this is what we're doing, and it creates that expectation for our family. And just start with the low-hanging fruit, kind of like I said. It doesn't have to be all things at the start. Just read the Bible for 10 minutes with your kids, pray with your kids, ask them about what they're learning at church. Just some real simple beginning steps, I think, is good first steps. And then, and I said this in my sermon also, to be relentless. You and your kids are going to make mistakes. You're not going to hit all cylinders on this. You're going to forget. Like I said, every 22 minutes vision leaks at my house. And so, but keep going. Get back up. Don't be discouraged. Don't be angry. Just know that forward momentum takes a long time to build, but it has to start somewhere. Yeah. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, that's all great information. And our 2 takeaways, the first is, if you're ready to really get serious about family discipleship, we really encourage you to check out this book. It's called Family Discipleship.
And you got to feel it.
And you've got to feel it. So order it in hardback. Get it in hardback. I
Squishy guy.
told Mark right before we recorded this, as we were discussing the qualities of the cover of this book, that we both share the same weird quirkiness that's what makes us work so well together.
That's right.
But anyway,
right.
So yes, check out Family Discipleship by Matt Chandler and Adam Griffith. And then the second thing is connect with us and let us know something maybe that we shared that's helped you. Maybe something, if you've taken one of those steps and put them into practice, let us know how that went. Whether that's positive or even some of the struggles, because,
Right.
As we've said before, these things it's not the flip of a switch. It's a process.
Right.
And, we're working towards an end goal. And so sometimes it takes...
And I'll say this, and I think that's a really good point, Randall, because, and I shared some of this in the sermon, and is that, at my house, this doesn't go well all the time. We there's some weeks where we meant to get to it and we didn't get to it. I mean, we have those moments, but sometimes knowing that other people are having the same struggles while we still have the same goals has helped me. When I find other families whose kids look awesome out in public, and I think, what's wrong with my kids? And then we find out, no, they're having the same issues. We all are in this struggle together. And so just sharing that with each other, maybe through some of our forums here would be really encouraging for us as well as for other parents.
Yeah,
so.
Let's have a conversation.
Yeah.
So, all right, with that, we're going to end.
Be abnormal.